Hey guys, it's Lady Lynn from Crafter's World, and we are going to be making a foam rose today that looks just like this. Okay, the supplies we need today for this project are going to be a pair of scissors, a sheet of green foam for the leaves, and a sheet of whatever color foam you want your flower to be, as well as a piece of aluminum foil. Also, you're going to need a ruler, a square of green felt. This one is approximately 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. You will also need one of these dowels that are kind of sharpened at one end, and that's going to be to stick through the aluminum foil, which we're going to use as our center mount to put the rose petals on to make our center. If you want to just cut your squares out of this with scissors, that's fine, but I think it's best and easier to use one of these rolling cutters to cut out your squares. But if you don't have one, it's okay, just use scissors. Then the last thing we're going to need is a glue gun. Okay, we're going to start out with our petals sheet of foam. I have a cutting mat here because I'm using my rolling cutter in order to make my squares. And I also have, for my ruler, a square because it makes everything more even and a lot easier. So like what I would do is, well, I'd have to turn this around. So what I would do is go ahead and line this up right here, and you can either mark it from right here to the 2 inches, or you can just put it along these lines here and then go ahead and cut those. Once you've got your strips cut out, then you can go back and cut out your squares. Okay, once we have all of our squares cut out, now we are going to cut these into petals. Take your first square and fold it in half. And then you're going to want to start right about here, 1/4 inch in, so you have a little flat part on the bottom, and then just kind of go around like this so that you have this shape right here. It'll almost look like a hot air balloon. Once you have your first one cut, you can go ahead and use it as a template to cut the other ones. You just stack it right on there and go around it. We are going to do this to every single square that you have cut out. So go ahead and cut out all your petals, and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, so if you have all your petals cut out, now we're going to go on to the next step. This next step you have to be quite careful with because we're going to be stretching these out. Okay, what you're going to start doing, and you need to do this gently, is we're going to, because you don't want to rip it, what we're going to do is stretch this out very carefully by rubbing your fingers along here, and we want to give it kind of a bowl shape right here. Okay, so just kind of gently tug it to thin it out because you don't want bulkiness with these petals. So we're going to go ahead and thin these out. When you're doing the edges, be very, very careful. You can tug a little bit hard, just don't do it too hard. You'll kind of get the knack for exactly how far you can push these. Okay, once we've got our little bowl shape and it's nice and thin in the middle here, then we're going to go around the edges and going to very carefully, starting at about 1/2 inch up, just very carefully tugging it like this, just apart from each other like this, so that what we're going to be doing is creating a ripple effect by making the outside part a little bit bigger than this part. So if we stretch these out like this very carefully, because this is the part where it could rip, then it's going to give us that ripple effect that we need for our petals. If you do rip one, it's not a big deal. Just go ahead and cut out another square, or if you think you can glue it back together, then go ahead and do that. These foam sheets are inexpensive enough that it doesn't matter if you don't get it right the first time, you know. So as you can see, by stretching out just around the edges here, we now have this rippling effect. And then you can go back and put your little impression in the middle again to give it more of a bowl shape again, if it's kind of come out. So this is what we should have right here. And we're going to do the same thing to every single one of our petals. So go ahead and get your other petals done the same way. Just make your bowl shape like this. Thin it out, and then go around the edges and pull them apart from each other very, very gently till they're thinned out, and get your ripple effect. Okay, so I'm going to finish my petals, and once they're all done, then we will go on to the next step, which will be gluing all the petals to our mount we're going to make. Okay, now we've got our petals all done, and we're going to now need our sheet of aluminum foil so we can make our center mount. We will also be using our little dowel here. So take your sheet of aluminum foil. You might need about half of this. And let's see, mine is about 6 inches by 8 inches or so. Okay, what we're going to do with this aluminum foil is we're going to ball it up. We're going to make a little ball, kind of roll it into a little ball. And then we're going to kind of shape the top to where this almost looks like a pear. So we want the top to be skinny and the bottom to be fat and round. And the very bottom to be a little bit flat. So just kind of shape your aluminum foil into something that looks like a Hershey's Kiss. Once you have that shaped, then we're going to start gluing our petals onto it. Okay, what we need to do when we're gluing these petals on, it is really hard to hold this in place and put these on. So we're going to use this, and we're going to put a hole through the bottom here with it, and it's going to hold our mount for us while we're gluing on petals. Okay, now this will come off if you do not put a drop of glue in it. Don't worry about the glue, it will come off later when we go to pull it out. Okay, so a little bit of hot glue, put your stick in there, and it'll hold on to it. And now we're going to start putting our petals around. Okay, our first couple of petals are going to go around it like this to where we have a rounded center. Okay, so we're going to glue it on and round it out like this. Now you'll have this piece kind of hanging here, so we're going to curve that under like that. Okay, so take your hot glue gun and go ahead and put a little bit of glue on here, and then stick your first petal on. Okay, and if you need more glue underneath or anything, go ahead and add that. If you need to trim the underneath a little bit so that it's not so that it fits, then that's fine too. And go in here and kind of get into the edges here and keep continuing to wrap it around, and do the same for this side. Just wrap it around, and you'll have this kind of circular middle here. Okay, make sure that gets closed up as much as possible so that nobody can see the aluminum foil through it. Okay, so we're making kind of a cone that goes around it, and then we're going to put one right here too. Do the same thing. So put some glue on here, and then go ahead and go underneath it up to the dowel right there and up over. Okay, and then glue around here, roll it over, And the same with that side. Okay, so that is our first thing of petals. Now we still have a little bit of aluminum foil left here that's showing, so we're going to go ahead and pop on another one right in that spot. And this one, you can have it open just a touch at the top like this, and that'll be fine. So put some more glue on here and stick your next petal on over that aluminum foil. Make sure you get it underneath too. And then just put a little bit on the sides here. You don't have to have it come all the way up and closed like the other ones. On this we're going to start doing our more open petals. Okay. And we're going to continue to go around and around until we have all the petals stuck onto our center mount. And once we're done with that, we're going to pull this thing out. Okay, I'm going to get one more on this side. And then once we're done with this inner part, we're going to be putting just a dab of glue only on the bottom part here. That way, if we just keep putting it on the sides here, we're going to have a really thick part like this, that when you put your backing on, it's not going to look all that great. So it's very, very important to get your next petals underneath here, okay? So just make sure that's tacked down good. Put a little bit more on the sides if you need to. If you get little glue things, like the little glue strings or anything, just go ahead and pull them off. Okay, see how that's starting to already look like a rose? And later on we're going to come back through here and kind of bend them down. But for now we're just going to glue them on. Okay, so usually what I do is I'll work in a like back, forth, and then side, side here. And as you get more on, then you just basically feel it out of where exactly you need your next petal to be for it to look even. But starting out, I try to do opposite sides from each other. Okay. Alright, so now on this next round, this is where we're going to start putting it just around the bottom. Just a little bit of glue on the bottom only. Okay. Just on the little bottom part here. Make sure your bowl shapes are pointing, the bowl part right here is pointing towards the center. You don't want it pointed the other way. And like I said, we're just going to go around and around. You can either do the opposite side and then fill in these, or some people like to just go over the next one like this and then continue around. I think it's easier to just do kind of opposites. Just a little on the bottom. And make sure your bottom parts down here are also sticking. If they're not, then go ahead and put a couple dabs of glue down here and then let them curve around like this. And having this stick right here really helps it to kind of stay stable and make it easier to hold. If you find that it's not easier to hold it that way, then you could take it out and just do whatever's comfortable for you. See, once I have one on this side and one on this side, this gap over here, that's where I put the next one. So what we're going to be doing is just going around the whole thing the exact same way, the entire way around. Just making sure that, you know, you get the petals fairly even. They don't have to be perfect. You can see our rose is really starting to take shape now. So now you can see we're right at the end here. And this is what it looks like from the top. And then from the bottom you can see that it's a little bit flat here so that we have a place to put our backing. Okay, so once we've got all our petals on, then you can go ahead and pull this out, and it comes out pretty easy. And then you'll want to take your glue and kind of fill in this center gap here where there's that hole, because you want your backing to really have something to grab onto. Plus it'll help to hold all those petals in place. Okay, now what we're going to do is get our green sheet, and we're going to make our leaves. So you only need a small piece of your green sheet. Your leaves are probably going to be about 3 or 4 inches long. So go ahead and cut a little strip. And then they can be about 2.5 inches wide or so. 2.5 to 3 inches. So just cut 3 or 4 of them out, depending on how many you want. You could even do it with just 2. I like to do it with 3. Okay, in order to make our leaves, the first one, what we can do is fold in half, like we did with our first petal. And then same thing, get about 1/4 inch in, and then go up like this and sharp curve to the center. That way you get a nice little point on it, okay? If you want to make your edges look a little more jagged, like some real leaves, you can take these kind of scissors with it's like the pinking shears, and go ahead and cut around the edges of your leaf so that you have a nice pointed edge over here. If you don't have these kind of scissors, you can just go ahead and cut the edges however you want with your scissors. You don't have to have them have jagged edges. If you want, you can just cut them like we first cut them when we folded it here, and just leave them that way. Then once we've got all of our petals cut out, we're gonna stretch them out just a touch down the center, and then we're going to put our markings on them to make them look a little bit more realistic. Now that we have our leaves cut out, we are going to use our impression tool. You could either use your little dowel, or I like to use my little plastic knife. It came with one of my punches for making envelopes, and it makes a really handy little tool. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this line down the middle that leaves have, and you can press down a little bit hard, not so hard that it rips in half, but just hard enough to make that impression really stick. And then put your side parts on like this. And do the same thing to all 3 of your petals, or 4 if you prefer 4. And that gives them a more realistic look. Once we have these tacked on to our rose, then we're going to go ahead and put our backing on. Okay, now we're going to paste on our leaves. Just kind of look and see where you want one. And if you want them to kind of bend down a little bit, you can go ahead and shape them like that by kind of rubbing your finger along the inside back part. And that way when you put them on, they sit like this, okay? So go ahead and take your glue gun and start gluing on your leaves. Okay, so now that we have those, and this should be fairly cooled, then we're going to go ahead and put on our felt onto the bottom and then glue on our backing. So get your piece of felt out, and you're going to cut it into a circle that will fit over this part of the bottom here, okay? So start cutting a circle. Make it bigger at first because it's better to have to cut it down rather than having to get a whole new piece and starting over. Because you want to make sure it's going to hold on those leaves and kind of cover them, and the bottom too. So yeah, that's about right. So we can go ahead and glue this one on. Okay, put that right over the center here. And if this bottom part is flat enough, it won't bunch too much. And if it's bunched a little bit, don't worry about it. It'll be just fine. If you need to tack down the edges a little bit, put a little bit more glue to make sure it's tacked down, then that's fine too. Okay, so we have that on. Now let me get a French clip so I can put that on there. Okay, I'm going to be putting a French clip on mine. So I'm going to take it apart. And depending on what kind of backing you put on, you might need another piece of felt to put over the center part to hold it down and make it look nice. And I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to take another piece. I've got a smaller French clip here, so I just need a small circle that'll fit over it. If you're using a headband, you don't have to worry about having a smaller one. Finishing details are very important when you're making hair bows. It's the difference between actually selling one and not selling one. So make sure you don't cheat yourself on putting really nice finishing touches to your bows, like covering any of the raw edges and stuff. This will also help hold this on better. What I like about these flowers is they're nice and lightweight, so they don't feel heavy in your hair. And then we're going to go ahead and put the French clip back together and we will be done. Okay, this is what our flower looks like now. We have a French clip on the back, and we have lots of nice curved petals and some leaves that are kind of curved down. And that's it. Thank you for joining me today.